Probably the best taught artists in the world are those that come from Russia. I've had the privilege of visiting artists from the Academy in both Moscow and St. Petersburg in their studios, and I've just been bowled over by the quality of the work that I've seen. And we have some of it here today in Belgravia Gallery. The Russian show features work from contemporary Russian artists from Moscow and St. Petersburg, as well as some artists from the Soviet era, which I find personally very interesting indeed. Viktor Egorov was one of the first artists that I met in St. Petersburg. He was born in 1972 in the Urals, and he qualified with honours from the Academy of Fine Art in St. Petersburg in 2005. He's a young painter, and he is, I believe, the finest painter of trees that I've ever come across. The views that you can see here are from St. Petersburg and the area around it. There's a beautiful lake at Oranienbaum and lovely trees in the autumn at that time. But we've also asked him to go to Verbier in Switzerland, which is known for its trees, where he has painted some of the most exquisite views of the resort and put them in a context of beautiful sunshine and snow, as we all aspire to when we go skiing there. Julia Valtseva, also from St. Petersburg, has a very different take on the subject of snow and trees. And we can see here these lovely silver birch, which have just got this fine abstract quality, very limited palette of colours, northern light, and these are exquisite, very lovely to live with, and very fine art. One of the studios that I visited in St. Petersburg was that of Nikolai Romanov, and it was in the old part of town, and going up a rickety staircase and coming into this wonderful studio and seeing not traditional Russian painting, but something new and bold and vibrant, really exquisite, strong-coloured landscapes that were very cubist in their form, and these have been much admired. He's exhibited in over 100 exhibitions over the years. He's a member of the prestigious Union of Russian Artists, and we really love his work here. Sourcing Russian art from the Soviet period is very interesting, and one of the best artists that we've come across is Ladvichenko. He was a noted painter of enormous frescoes, and this here is one of them. It's called The Glory of Work, and it's a celebration of the working man, the men striking the iron and working at a furnace. He celebrates Soviet life in all its forms, both in industry in this painting, and over here we have another painting of him celebrating the harvest, another part of Russian life. The reason that these Ladvichenkos are this format, long and narrow, is because they're the studies for major frescoes that were put into public buildings. Some of them are even designs for ceilings. Ever present in Soviet art is the figure of Lenin. We see him here as the benign, fatherly figure sitting in his chair, contemplating his nation. In other paintings, we can see him as the man addressing the Winter Palace following the storming of the Winter Palace. We can date quite a lot of Soviet art by the colours that were used, and by, in the case of subjects like the storming of the Winter Palace, whether or not Stalin was in it. In this picture here, we can see Stalin firmly in the background. In others, he wasn't. So after Stalin died and there was de-Stalinization, Stalin disappeared from view in many of these works. Art in the Soviet period was used to encourage patriotism among the people and to encourage people to work really hard. And it's no surprise, therefore, that the workman was celebrated in the way of a painting here. This one is by Korobov, and it's a really wonderful watercolour celebrating furnace workers. There was a distinct shift in the colours used from the time of Khrushchev than prior to him coming to power. They were brighter, the styles were much looser, and no more so you can see it than in this picture here, which is a celebration of the workman again, but in this time it's the harvest, but bringing in the harvest not with a sickle, but with a socking great combine harvester, wonderful sunshine, hunky men, and even a wonderful piece of consumerism here in the form of a motorbike. Women have always been celebrated in Russian art, and in this piece by Alicia Gibbet, it's a contemporary piece, a beautiful nude is combing her hair, and this is exquisitely painted with a very limited palette. It's a lovely piece. Very different, however, is this idealized version of womanhood. Motherhood was very prized in the Soviet Union. Medals were given for the number of children that you had. And this painting idealizes Soviet motherhood with this beautiful baby, a very tender mother with almost a halo around her head, and again a bit of consumerism in the background in the form of a lovely looking sewing machine. So this is idealizing life in the time of the Soviet Union. We have here with us today Tanya Tolstoy, who is the curator of this exhibition at Belgravia Gallery. One of the artists that you've encouraged from St. Petersburg is actually English, Robert Truscott, who does these very fine sculptures of mainly war scenes and ballerinas. Do you want to tell us a bit about them?
He considers that the sculpture training in Russia is the best. So he did all his training there and he casts there, and then he brings his works to sell here. He sells regularly. And he's particularly taken by the great sadness of Russian history. So he has very many very sad pieces about First World War and the Second World War, and they're all simply marvellous. But they are absolutely terrific and very, very powerful. His other subjects are Russian ballerinas, and he's very lucky. He has the great privilege of having ballerinas from the Mariinsky actually pose for him, and that is everything to an artist.
Works by Russian painters can be seen on our website all the year round, www.belgraviagallery.com.